A big key moment that sort of got me started on this path was trusting my intuition and giving people what they need and not exactly what they've asked for, and being brave enough to do that.
Welcome to That Pivotal Moment of Change, the podcast where we dive into the career-defining moments that shape who we become. Success, setbacks, big decisions, we unpack it all. Let's get into it. On today's episode, we speak with Sophia Prater.
Hey, Sophia, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad you're here, and I am looking forward to the discussion today.
Yeah, me too. Let's do it.
All right, let's jump in here. So I am going to start off with some questions about you. Can you talk about your work at Rewired UX?
I can. Yeah, sure. So do you want what we're doing now, where we're going, where we were before? Just like present day work at Rewired?
Give me present day work and what led you to Rewired.
Okay, yeah. So right now, the main thing that my company does is provide training for object-oriented UX. So I have a certification, I have an online course, a couple online courses, and basically this object-oriented UX philosophy and the OOUX process, which I'm sure we might talk about, the how of how I take lots of complexity and synthesize it and turn it into structure. I teach that. It was transformative in my career, so I just want to share it with as many people as possible. We have clients here and there, and I always say in full transparency, my clients are like my test subjects. They're basically to keep me sharp, so I'm not just doing the teaching and not doing the actual doing. So I kind of cycle between going and serving my clients with object-oriented UX and then going and teaching it and further refining the methodology. So that is the main thing that we do at Rewired UX currently. And I started my company back in 2014. So this is the 10-year anniversary of Rewired UX, which is amazing. It is by far the longest I have been at any organization, like almost times 10, the longest I've been at any organization. And I started off just consulting. I shouldn't say just, I started off consulting to startups. Weaving in object-oriented UX at that point was embryonic. But I knew that I was really good at taking complex situations and complex domains, complex challenges, and making them simple. And I was also really good at working with developers. So I kind of got a name in the Atlanta area within the startup community there. I hung out at the incubators and basically through word of mouth got plenty of clients that way. Mostly working with myself as the design team of one and a bunch of engineers with their startup. So I started my company in 2014. And before that, I was working at companies, working in agencies as a UX designer.
Awesome. And congratulations on 10 years.
Thank you.
That is very impressive. Certainly something to be proud of.
It feels like a big deal. It definitely feels like a big deal. It crept up on me.
That is a big deal. I think that's great. And you mentioned object-oriented UX. So I just want to go back for just a moment. Do you want to talk about what that is?
Yeah, sure. So basically, this is simply a design philosophy for designing digital products, digital environments, digital spaces that respects the fact that people think in objects and that people need to understand the objects to understand an environment that they're in. And by objects, I don't mean components. If you're talking to digital product professionals, sometimes people think of objects as like the drop downs and the nav bars and the buttons. I like to say nobody is coming for your UI elements. Those are all means to an end. When I say objects, I mean the concepts, the conceptual things that people actually care about. And sometimes, well, I would say actually, in most traditional design processes, we really do focus on the verbs, and the verbs are very, very important. People need to get stuff done, right? The verb, what people need to do in their task flows is of the utmost importance. But to be able to do things in an intuitive way, our users and humans overall need to understand what the things are that they're acting upon, what the things are in their environment. And human beings, we are very noun focused. You can see this in children. Usually, like the first 20 words are going to be nouns. This is how little newly minted humans are building their understanding of the world. They're starting with the nouns, so the easiest things to wrap our heads around. Usually first words are not verbs. Sometimes the only, if we look at statistically of the top 20 first words, the only one that is not a noun is no. That is the only first word. And there's other ones that are common like up or gimme or something like that, but most of them are going to be nouns. And then when you get into the hundreds of words, like 80-90% are going to be nouns. So this is how we build our understanding. This is how kids build their understanding of the world. This is how we build our understanding when we go into a new environment. We start thinking about what are the things very tacitly, it's not consciously, but to really navigate a space, we need to really understand the things in that space. And we use all of our perception. Our visual cortex is like, I don't know, like almost a third of your brain. It's a very old part of the brain. And that visual cortex is all about figuring out what the things are in space and how those things relate to each other. Even those that have visual impairments, their visual cortex is still lighting up. Their visual cortex is still working. They're just using other inputs to be able to figure out the what and the where. And when we are kind of separated from the laws of physics as designers, so I actually started off my career in industrial design, designing physical products. And you're beholden to the laws of physics. And what happens is digital designers, we get freed from the laws of physics, which is wonderful. So um, that's why technology is so amazing, is because we can be in 18 places at once and we can undo and we can Google things. We are detached from the laws of physics, but some laws of physics are just going to confuse the hell out of people if we break them. So object-oriented UX is simply saying, I know that was kind of a tirade, but object-oriented UX is just simply saying like, hey, let's make sure we get really good definitions and we get lots of clarity on the things, the nouns, the concepts, that we get internal, like within our team, we get really, really clear on what we're calling these things and how they connect to each other so that we can communicate that clearly to our users so that they can get stuff done, so that the verbs are much more powerful because they understand the things that they're acting upon.
It's really interesting. I saw you talk about this at UX by UX and just love the idea of it. Could you talk a little bit about what your training looks like to help designers understand how to do this?
We have a masterclass right now. We're not enrolling right now. We'll be enrolling next year in the masterclass and in the certification. But what it looks like is basically what we teach the philosophy, the principles of object-oriented UX, and then we get into the how. How do you actually do this? How do you integrate what I like to call the third diamond in the double diamond? So if you think about the double diamond, there is an obvious weak spot right in the middle, right? Where you go from discovery and you go from understanding the problem into actually design and putting pen to paper. And that is this synthesis process. And information architecture, basically structuring. How do you take all this chaos and put it into structure and write really amazing requirements, define the thing before you start designing it? So that is really where my training lies, is in that sweet spot between research and definition and actual design and implementation. It's that middle diamond, to kind of like cinch up that thing, that part of the process that I feel like is has a weakness right there. So what we teach ORCA, and that is objects, relationships, calls to action, attributes. And it is an iterative process. We go through 4 rounds of the ORCA process in the masterclass and the certifications. We go through discovery round, which is really just all about figuring out what we don't know, unknown unknowns. So when you're going through these 4 lenses, or these 4 pillars that we call them, objects, relationships, calls to action, attributes, really complexity just cannot hide from this process. Like if you are looking at any problem space with those 4 lenses and from those 4 different angles, you will come up with so many questions. You will realize what you don't know, all the gotchas, and all the questions that will often come up much later in the process when you're like deep in Figma or even in production. All those questions are brought in an early stage. So that first round of the process is just like, what are our assumptions? What do we not even know? What do we need to be asking the stakeholders, the users, the developers? Then we go into requirements. So we just write bang in requirements, really figure out from a UX perspective, what is this thing supposed to actually do? Let's really define the hell out of it. And then we go into a prioritization round where we say, okay, now that we really understand the thing, what are we building first? What's going to be a strategic foundation so that we can iterate on this thing in a way that does not create rework? I often say iteration is a euphemism for rework often. Oh, we're just going to iterate on it. We're just going to like throw shit at the wall and see what happens and then redo it. That is not a very effective way to work. So we go through prioritization. We kind of roadmap the thing. And then we go into representation where we start building very, very low fidelity screens based on all the work that we did. So basically we teach those 4 rounds of the Orca process, and it's really fun. It's really mind bendy. We've got a really robust community of nerds who have really changed their career and have found so much more actually like meaning in your career because as a UX designer, because it helps you go so many levels deeper where often we're just kind of skating along the surface of screen design and moving the deck chairs around. This really helps get you into systemic change within a product or a digital environment.
Absolutely. I love it. We could probably spend an entire episode just asking you questions about this because I think it's fascinating.
Oh, I can spend 22 hours talking about it, and I did. That's the master class.
I have a lot of questions about you that I want to get into, but
All right, awesome.
where could people find you to learn more?
Oh, thank you for asking. So OOUX.com is the place to go if you just want to go ahead and get on the wait list. So the next certification is a year from now. We just wrapped cohort 10. So cohort 11 is going to be fall, back to school season. Put it on your goals. Go back to school in 2025 in cohort 11. And that you can go ahead and get on the wait list at OOUX.com/certification. And I'm going to be doing all sorts of goodies and giveaways throughout the year if you're on the wait list. So go ahead and get on that.
All questions about you now. So some reflective questions. What are some key lessons you've learned throughout your career?
Okay. So I'll start kind of like at the beginning of OOUX, which has been so transformative in my career, like going down that path. And a big key moment that sort of got me started on this path was trusting my intuition and giving people what they need and not exactly what they've asked for, and being brave enough to do that as a pretty junior designer. So that was, I was working at CNN. I had been put in charge of election results 2012, and just lead the UX for that. And this was the first responsive design that I had ever done. It was the first responsive design that CNN had ever done. And I was asked, I had very little lead time from the first sprint, the first iterative sprint that development was starting on. And they said, okay, Sophia, I know you only have like 4 days to do this. You're just getting pulled into this, but all we need is the mobile, tablet, and desktop screens for the state detail page. So state detail, like the template for California or Georgia or New Jersey, right? So we just need that one screen, but we need it in the 3 different breakpoints, but we just need that one screen. And I started I just kind of went down this like rabbit hole of what is wait, what is a US election? What like I had to like educate myself on what I was actually designing because I was actually not so into politics. Still am not so into politics, but I had to like understand this domain that I didn't know much about. And what I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, like I can't just design this cog in this machine without thinking about the whole machine. And that's what changed my thinking. That moment of like, I need to think about this from a system level. I should not be thinking about this page by page. I want to think about this entire system. So what I delivered that Monday when everybody was expecting like big meeting, 12 people in the meeting, everybody like, okay, what's the state detail page going to look like? And I handed out an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper to everybody that I printed out. And it was basically what we call in the OUX world a nav flow, but it was showing reusable parts and how reusable parts could be used across 4 different screens. So it was 4 very low fidelity screens, if you will, but it was showing how states and races and ballot measures and results all worked together within a system, a very low fidelity system. And I was terrified to do it, but I knew that that was the right way to go. And I took a risk, and they loved it. And that basically became the backbone of the entire design, which was used in 2016. Even today, if I go to CNN.com, I see remnants of that design and that kind of backbone of thinking about the actual concepts and how they connected to each other. So that was a really key moment. Can I give you one more?
Please do. And that was a great one, by the way. And I could just imagine being responsible for the election in 2012 being thrown at you. That's impressive.
They put me in a leadership position, but asked me to do a thing. And I think that that's the takeaway here is like, if you are responsible for getting something done, like I was responsible for the UX of election results on, I think it was like November 9th or November 11th or something like that. That was my responsibility, but I had been told how to do it, and I threw that in the bin. And I said, no, that's not how we're supposed to do it. Of course, I had already gotten myself a reputation for being reliable and delivering. So there was already a certain amount of trust there. So I think that you do have to build a little bit of trust. Sometimes you do have to kind of pay your dues, give people what they're asking for, But at some point, when you feel really, really confident, or when you just feel really, really that intuitive hit of like, wow, no, this is not the way we need to be thinking about this, to give people something that they totally aren't expecting. And it was, over the weekend I was working through this. So it was just Monday morning. I didn't have time to actually even alert my manager or anything that I wasn't going to be delivering what he thought I was going to be delivering, but it worked out. So that's the main takeaway there with that one, I think. And that was a big lesson that I have built upon throughout my career. So the other one that was just really pivotal for me is this idea of sell it and then build it. And I was starting to get into thinking about how do I package what I'm doing into some sort of online course. This was at the end of 2019. And I started looking into online courses, and I forgot who said this, but it kind of got downloaded to me from multiple people. But this idea of like, it sounds so swarmy of sell it and then build it, like sell somebody something before you even built it. What? That doesn't sound very ethical, but that is exactly how I created the certification. I knew it was going to be about 10 weeks. I outlined the thing. I had the first 2 weeks planned out, and then I got 20 people to sign up for the thing. And then I made sure, like week by week, I had the content ready for them. And I built it. I actually built the course after selling it to 20 people who knew, and I was transparent about it, right? And these were like my my super fans that were already like, yes, okay, Sophia, I'm ready to sign up for any kind of training. But this has served me also in public speaking of like, let's apply for the thing, say yes to the thing before I have the whole thing built. Like, let me pitch this talk or let me pitch this workshop to a conference before I have it all figured out. Then when I get to a yes, okay, I got like a month and a half, I got 2 months to build it. Now I'll build it. Because if we wait to have it all done and have it all ready before we sell it, for me personally, then I will never do it. So this is also a way of creating some forced functions in your life, creating deadlines for yourself to kind of move the ball forward.
It also mirrors back to what you talked about at CNN and just being confident and trusting yourself.
Yeah. Self-trust has been it's been a big earth lesson for me, I would say. It's one of the things I came here to learn is learning self-trust and just saying, you know what, I'm going to be able to figure it out. Everything is figure outable. I'm going to be able to figure it out. And then I've had to learn how to, well, maybe we'll talk about that later, but yeah, learn how to then not work myself into the ground and not promise too much.
which is probably the shadow side of the confidence I can get it done piece.
Exactly. Yes.
And I think we
Yes.
probably will get into
Oh,
that type of thing in a little bit. You may have just touched on some of this, but I wanted to ask you, what are some of the biggest challenges you faced in your career, and how did you overcome those challenges?
yeah. Okay. So that perfectly segues because it was first, when I started my business, I kind of turned to mush for the first year or two. I was like sleeping late, working till 3 a.m., taking on too many clients, and then getting burnt out and then not having any clients. Like I had very little structure in place. I had very little structure in place to start getting my ideas out. I had like a notebook full of ideas without a whole lot of execution. There was a lot of perfectionism going on there. So I had to learn to create structures for myself. I had to learn how to basically UX my day or UX my life and kind of like hack my day to day so that I gamify even my day to day. So like there was lots of tracking involved. There was lots of calendar blocking involved. There were lots of like goals breaking down into smaller goals. I had to really figure that out. So I read a lot of books on that kind of thing, on productivity and time management. So I had to figure out all those structures, and that was amazing. And that took me 4 years. Like I really don't feel like my business and like teaching OOUX and really getting OOUX out there didn't start until I started my first podcast in 2018. Like, and I thought about that podcast for 2 years before I started it. So I had to figure out how to like get the flywheel going so I would actually make things happen and get stuff done and create all those structures. And then in the last 24 months, I've been having to learn to break down those structures because those structures went from being like kind of like a bouncer and a cheerleader and encouraging me to I became kind of a servant to the structures versus the structures serving me. And it became a little crazy making. So I had so many structures, and then I had this lack of self-trust happening because I thought that like if I took the structures away, then again I would just like turn to mush and I would never get anything done. So learning how to actually break down some of the structures and recognize that I can stand on my own, that was the challenge.
Any tips or pieces of advice on how you went about actually breaking down those structures? Because I think that's often a really tricky thing to do.
Yeah, one, I got a coach. I got multiple coaches, so I got help with it. I found somebody that really resonated with me. Shout out to Gervais Colmos. She helped me a lot with this. So sometimes you just need help. Like I think that sometimes I think I was trying to DIY it for a long time. And then and the amount of money that I paid her at the beginning of 2023, I was like, oh, I cannot believe I'm putting this amount of money into my mental health. Like it does not. And I'm like, and then after it, I was like, that was freaking priceless. Like take more of my money because I could see like how actually having like instead of just trying to read books on it. So figuring out what your thing is, whatever your thing is. For some people, it's not going to be breaking down those structures, and find somebody. So one, I got a coach on that. I got somebody to give me perspective and help me on that and actually coach me in self-trust and coach me in like saying like, let's do this thing one at a time. So I stopped tracking my steps. I stopped and I realized, oh my gosh, I still walk every day, even if without tracking my steps. Because I actually enjoy it, and recognizing that like even some of the joy of walking every day and getting outside was actually being taken away because I was like, oh, I need to get X amount of steps every day in. And it became this chore versus like, this is the thing that I'm doing out of love, not out of kind of obligation to an app, literally. So that's one example. Things like I was checking off that I was journaling every day. And I stopped checking it off and I recognized, oh, I've created this habit and I still love doing it. And I've recognized the value in it. So I don't need to check this off. So I guess the advice here is recognize like maybe there's a few things you need to track while you're creating the habit. And then after the habit is created, it's like you can take the training wheels off. You don't have to continue tracking everything. Like so that and then that just adds up. And by the end of your life, you're tracking like 25 things throughout the day or something, which is just ridiculous. And that's where I was. I was probably tracking like 20 different metrics on a daily basis and to-dos. And then I would feel guilty if it didn't get done. So I was like bringing this shit on vacation. I was feeling guilty if like a day went sideways and I wouldn't get it done, and just realized like, no, I journal most days, every day-ish. And it's cool if I skip a day, or it's cool if I don't walk today because it's like really gross outside. That's fine. I don't need to force myself to do it. So maybe you're tracking like right now, what am I? I'm not tracking anything right now, actually. So like tracking like one or two things if you're trying to start a new habit, and then play with taking the tracking off. Yeah.
Good advice. Thank you.
Are you a tracker?
I think maybe in some things, so
Yeah.
could kind of relate. But yeah, I think that's good advice. And I also appreciate what you said with asking for help. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's something people should not shy away from. There's nothing wrong ever with asking for help and getting
Right.
that outside perspective.
Right. I never wanted to really, I never thought I needed to invest in it. Because I have pretty good mental health, but this was getting into optimization and thinking like, oh, well, I don't have any kind of clinical diagnosis, so why would I pay money to do this thing? But yeah, I think coaches are wonderful. I'm one of them. And there is the fast track, right? I could trial and error. And I had done a lot of personal growth through DIYing it and reading amazing books and watching YouTube videos. But yeah, actually getting somebody in my court was, you do get what you pay for. I mean, then there's one other thing that I want to say about just this challenge of really like taking away the structures is also, it's a challenge of slowing down and saying no to things and recognizing that like, okay, this, I'm going to create this force function, but I'm going to be kind to myself, and I'm going to recognize that like I don't need, multiple of those going at once. And when I say I'm going to do something, I want to be able to actually fulfill that. So I want to give myself a really good timeline. And another thing that I am just starting to play with is like actually taking a winter, like taking, like, I feel like I've been living my life in like a spring planting, a summer growing, and then harvesting, and then just going straight into planting and kind of doing it all at once. It's just like plant, grow, harvest, plant, grow, harvest. And like, we need time. We need time to lay fallow and let our soil regenerate. And that is something that at like 40 years old, I'm like, yeah, I actually need that. And it is going to make the planting season and the growing season and the harvesting season so much more fruitful if I do take time to reflect and rest and process, like just process everything that's happened in a year, and really give myself time to do that. So I am really trying to do that this winter, is giving myself a lot of space and kind of letting myself, I've been saying like letting myself metaphorically and literally like sit by a fire and darn some socks. Um, I think that we need it. And it was baked into human existence for a really long time. And then with industrialization, now we're just kind of, and the light bulb, like we're just 24/7, 365. And I don't think we're designed to live like that.
I would agree. And that's something I need to do a much better job of myself. I feel like I'm always on the go. I don't say no. But you're right, taking that step back to unwind and just relax, get yourself ready to go again is hugely important. So I totally appreciate that. Can you share an instance where a setback or failure turned out to be a hidden opportunity?
Yes. Yeah, like the first 5 years of my career, basically. I mean, that was like all I say that OUX and the Orca process grew out of the pain and suffering of the first 5 years of my career. So I started in UX. My first job was a UE analyst because we weren't even saying UX. So it was like 2009 era. And people say today, oh, nobody understands UX. Like people really didn't understand UX in 2009, back in my day. And I would get, I was consulted at Accenture, and I would get thrown into these super complex B2B scenarios and like just be thrown, like just here's the, here's the SharePoint folder or whatever it was back then, the SharePoint folder of everything. And here's all these wireframes that like a project manager did 6 months ago. And here's some more wireframes that the UX designer who's no longer with us, they did. And like, just it was like, and can you figure this out and get us wireframes by Friday? And I'm like, I don't even understand this domain. So it was just, and I want to do good work. And I just felt like I was set up to fail over and over and over again because I was asked to just put my UX fairy dust on the screens and like add some more white space, and like turn all these ticky boxes into some cute drop downs. Like, even though I had no idea what the information was in the ticky boxes and the drop downs. And I was just like guessing a lot and I didn't have good questions to ask. So then I would be playing what I like to call the bring me a rock game. Or it's like I would go to the stakeholders and be like, is this the kind of rock that you're looking for? And they'd be like, that's not quite the rock that we're looking for. And then I'd like go back to the pile and like find a different rock or like shave the rock off a little bit. Be like, is this the kind of rock you're looking for? Oh, maybe like a little bit like more on this side and less on that side. So it was just like a whole lot of rework. It was really frustrating. It wasn't fun. And I was really excited about UX when I got into it. I was like, this is perfect. This is so fun in theory. And then it wasn't fun and it was just frustrating. And so that was the crucible. That was the crucible for that. That's when we innovate, we need to look to it's the truism of necessity is the mother of invention, but like pain is the mother of invention too. Like, that's what we do as UX designers is we look for pain points so we can make things better. And when we look at our mistakes or failures and we can look at the pain and we can say, okay, like, how should this be happening? That's where the gems are. And I'll just say, like, I really like the word failure. I feel like we need a better word because failures of action are never really failures because we're just learning. Like, the real failure is not trying, right? The real failure is like playing small and staying small and being too scared to do a thing or being too much of a perfectionist to do a thing so that you never actually try it. Like, if you're the path to success will have failure on it. And like, just to like recognize that and accept it and be like, I am going to be failing. Like, I will fail. Like, if I want to be a public speaker, there's going to be talks that like don't go so well, right? Like, it just is going to happen. And then you can accept it and be like, that's just part of it. If I'm going to create an online business, I'm going to send emails with the wrong link all the time, right? If I'm doing all of these public events or like if I'm hosting events, there's going to be an event every now and then that I show up an hour late to. That happened a couple months ago, right? It took me 5 years of business to literally miss my own event. But it's going to happen, right? If you do a lot of stuff, you make a lot of mistakes and then you just learn from them.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think you can succeed unless you fail.
No.
Kind of going back to one of your earlier points, I think people also have to give themselves that break of just understanding I'm a human being and I'm going to make mistakes and I'm going to fail. And that's perfectly okay. Everybody does it.
Yes. My favorite kind of modern philosopher, his name is Oliver Berkman. He has also just changed my life. I will like any book he comes out with. I'm like, he did a course too, and it was basically him reading his book, and I was just like, take my money. And he talks about this, and he talks about how he's got a very kind of Buddhist slant to him, but very much in the modern world of knowledge workers who are overachievers, basically. So he speaks directly to my soul, and he talks about like this Buddhist principle of the suffering is in thinking that the suffering shouldn't be there. Like, the life is just a series of problems. Like, that's just what it is. Like, you're like, oh, you don't want any problems? Okay, well, that's going to be when you're dead. When you're dead, then you'll have no problems. But up until then, like, it's just going to be a series of problems. And it's just a matter of like solving and tackling bigger and more interesting problems as you go through life. But it is just going to be a series of problems. And if we can accept that, then you can just dive into the problem and be like interested in it and be present with it and actually kind of have fun trying to solve it.
100% agree with you. A big part of it is just kind of understanding that things are going to be okay. Things are going to work out. It's one of the reasons why I had the idea to do this podcast to begin with, is to talk about things like that. And I think a lot of times people fail or come up with this situation, and then immediately you go to this negative space and you think, okay, everything's going to go wrong. This isn't going to work out. And then the reality is that typically doesn't happen, or something you learned in that moment, or something that caused a failure at some point turns into an opportunity.
Yes. The book that I'm reading right now, Oliver's book, is Oliver, we're on a first name basis. Is called Meditations for Mortals, and it is like one chapter a day for 4 weeks. And the chapter that I read today was titled There's Good Times and Good Stories. And that's it. Like, either it works out and it's a great time, or it doesn't work out and it's probably going to be a good story, or you're going to learn something from it, right? There's good times and good stories, and that's about it.
I'm going to steal that.
Yeah, I stole it. You could have it too.
Okay. So moving on here, can you recall a moment in your career that significantly influenced your path?
Ooh, there's so many good ones, but I think when my first public speaking engagement was at Adaptive Path's UX Week with Jesse James Garrett back in 2013. And I spoke at that conference about the election. It was like a case study on the election results. And a couple months later, he wrote all the speakers and he says, hey, does anybody, who should we have speak in 2014? And I just raised my hand and I said, me, can I do a workshop on that talk? And I had no idea what that workshop was going to be, going back to the force functions. And I was, completely unknown person. I gave a talk. I guess I proved myself that I could get on stage in front of 500 people and give a talk. And Jesse James Garrett, bless him, took a risk on me and said, sure, let's turn your talk into a workshop. Let's do it. And, as somebody who has hosted other people, like, the fact that he just said yes and trusted me was amazing. So, like, hats off to JJG for taking a risk. And that's what turned into OOUX. It was that talk that then I had to figure out, how would I teach the things that went right during that CNN election results experience in 2012. I distilled into a talk. I distilled it into 5 points. Those 5 points basically evolved into, okay, how would I do this again? How would I teach this? How do I turn this into a 8 freaking hour workshop? So that was really amazing. And just like, there were so many other little ones, like Christopher, like it's like people, it's like interactions with people where people say something or do something or give you something. And only in retrospect, you're like, wow, it is so amazing that we came together and that I sort of like paid attention to that thing. So like Christopher Noso, I think I'm pronouncing it right. He wrote the And Make It So book. It's a Rosenfeld book about sci-fi and UX. I was at UX Lisbon. I was speaking at UX Lisbon, and he was also speaking, and he was giving this talk. And in his talk, he showed this matrix of animals. It was like a poster from the turn of the century or something, and it was a matrix of animals, like the same animals on the x-axis and the y-axis, and then showing all the combinations of those animals. And because I was paying attention, which of course I wasn't paying attention to every single talk, you know how it is at conferences, right? But I was paying attention, and I wrote it down in my notebook, and I was like, there is something to this. And that is what turned into the nested object matrix, which is like one of the jewels of the process. Like, it was something about that. So like, actually, that was a key moment of just like paying attention to the information that was passing through in front of my eyes, and recognizing like, this is a gem here, and I'm going to turn this into something. I mean, there was so many moments like that where it was like this one person saying this one thing, or this person asking me out for coffee, and we end up spending 8 hours at a coffee shop. That was Mariana Ivanova in Bulgaria. Like, she came to my workshop, and then we met up the next day, and we spent the entire day together completely spontaneously. And that's where the Orca process came from, was just that 8 hour conversation with her, and the feedback she had on the workshop, and us moving sticky notes around. And like, I thought I was going to sightsee that day, and we ended up spending 8 hours in a coffee shop in Sofia, Bulgaria. And so like, it's kind of like, I guess you just never know what those moments are going to be, but kind of being ready for them, being ready for a pivotal moment at any time.
No, that's just so cool. And it's just like all these dots that you look back on, and they somehow come forward and connect. I love that. Um, what skills or mindsets have been crucial in navigating your career twists and turns?
I think I learned at Georgia Tech in industrial design school through a really, really mean professor to not get tied to your first idea and to not be precious with your ideas. I mean, he would literally like take your piece of paper off the wall and rip it up into tiny pieces and throw them in your face. So like I cried a lot. I cried a lot my freshman year at Georgia Tech. So shout out to Manu. He was terrible. He was terrible. He would tell us, he was like, if you're sleeping more than 4 hours every night, then I'm not doing my job. Like he was like just trying to weed us out. He was awful, right? But he taught me that, sometimes like your your teachers and your coaches don't need to be your best friends. Sometimes I'm also a tough love coach. And he was, I don't know if there was any love in there, but he was tough. And he just really taught me to like not be precious with my ideas. Like my ideas are not a reflection of me and my value as a human being. So that was just a really important skill I think that I've it's just like, oh, like we can scrap that. Like the Orca process just changed this year. It went from 15 steps to 16 steps, which I know sounds ridiculous. There's a 15-step, 16-step process, but like we changed the last round. Like, not even being precious with this thing that I literally had this course on. And, I'm teaching it to everybody. If I'm like, no, I'm never going to evolve it, then that's not serving anybody. So being able to change your mind, I guess, I think that's something that I actually, we talk about with politicians. Oh, they're flip-flopping, they're change. Like, that's a good thing. You want people that change their mind. You want people that evolve and say like, ooh, like what I thought 10 years ago is not the same as I think today. So I think I keep a really open mind. And then the other thing is, I mean, OOUX, hello, like that is just the ability to take a complex problem, no matter what it is, and confidently go into it and be like, I know how to break down this problem. I know how to see through it. I know how to ask really good questions. Like that is what I teach. And that is the skill. And I teach it because it is such an important skill for any UXer, is to be able to take apart a complex domain. And things are just going to get more and more complicated, y'all. It's not going to get any better. It's just going to get more. You're going to need tools to navigate complexity and to break and do it like in a fun way too. So it's not stressful and overwhelming. Like, so it's like, ooh, like what a juicy puzzle that I get to play with here, but I have the tools to do it. And I can take all those puzzle pieces and I can turn them right side up and I can make sure I have all the right puzzle pieces. And we're all solving the same puzzle too. Like often it's like the puzzle pieces are upside down and somebody ate one of the puzzle pieces and like and then there's like multiple puzzles in there and nobody knows what puzzle they're even trying to solve. And that's not a fun game to play. So just like being able to like make solving really tough problems fun and game-like that's an awesome skill. I love it.
You're so right. And the problems are going to get more complicated. I mean, I think they always were, but incrementally, they get a lot more complicated. I mean, I remember my first real design job, we were only designing for one screen. It was one screen. And I remember working on UI and dating myself here, but for phones, and you had a left, right, up, down, and OK button in the middle. That was it. That was your device UI.
Yes.
You wanted to design something for mobile, it was a completely different design. And now you look at all the different screens we have and you think about the omni-channel and all these different moments that a designer has to think about because they're all part of the problem. And we think right now, oh, this is getting really complicated. I can't even imagine.
Right. And I think AI is just going to make things more complicated. It's going to make some things less complicated. It's going to help us in so many profound ways that it's really exciting. But I think it's not going to solve for the complexity of really understanding things. And I think that I think the other thing is just like with all the work that we were doing, dating ourselves like back in the like before, the very first responsive design back in 2012, like all that, like a lot of that legacy code where we were doing it really, really fast and we weren't thinking it through is still in play. And we are building on all of that legacy code. And things are getting not only more complicated, but they're getting more and more fragile. And we can see that in the internet. Like, I don't know, do you see that in the internet where like Google is bugging out? Apple products are bugging out. Like, it's because, we have a kind of a shaky foundation, and there's a lot of spaghetti code. There is a lot of legacy interfaces as well. And then like there's mergers and acquisitions, and in these, it's just getting more and more complicated as we like grow up as an industry, as technology gets older and older. It's like I feel like we're kind of this like, I don't know, teenager, like really like technology is just kind of like an angry teenager right now, that their like prefrontal cortex is parsing or something like that, or needs to parse, and just so much is going on. And yeah, it's a mess.
So, okay, I have a few more questions for you. If you could go back in time, is there anything that you would have done differently with your career?
I mean, we've been talking about self-trust and intuition, and I had moments of that, but I really wish that I had had the skills of trusting my intuition and trusting my gut earlier on. Like, I really started like learning to do that and being like, wait, what is my intuition? How do I know this message is in my intuition and not just conditioning? Um, I mean, that wasn't until like 2 years ago. So I think that I really had to kind of power through to trust my intuition. And I mean, even like starting the course, like I probably could have done that a little bit earlier, but I had to have somebody else help me through that, to help me understand that it was the right time and place. I think I second guessed myself a lot. I was worried about what other people would think, or if I would be able to do it perfectly. So I really wish that I had been able to, if I could go back in time, I would I would teach, I would bring my Oliver Burkeman book of Meditations for Mortals, and I would bring that to Sophia in her mid-20s and be like, just read this here. And then there's a couple other books, but basically on intuition and, trusting my timeline. I spent so many years just like ending the day kicking myself for not getting more done, ending the day feeling like I didn't get enough done. And it took me until very recently to be like, I don't want to be an old lady and look back on this and be like, oh my gosh, I had this amazing career. I had so much privilege, such a beautiful life. And I kind of threw that away because at the end of the day, I would just feel bad that I didn't get more done in the day. And that really is no way to live. So I think I lived the majority of my career. I mean, I'm still struggling with this at the end of the day if I don't get everything done, but I am slowly learning to appreciate what I did get done and appreciate how I am growing and just trusting the timeline. Like, I think I would look at the horizon and I would immediately feel anxiety for not being there. I could see I could see what it could be, but from where I'm standing, I'm like, oh, why am I not there yet? Instead of being like, how cool that I can see this amazing version of the horizon, but really appreciate where I am now, and having that like that balance between a vision of the future and being excited about a vision of the future, and not being complacent with your present, but still being compassionate with your present. And there's another C word that I'm thinking of, compassionate with your present, not complacent, comfortable. I don't know. There's another C word that I'm trying to think of, but like okay with where you are now, and actually even really like loving of where you are now in the present moment. So I think I spent probably a decade and a half with a lot more anxiety and beating myself up than I needed to. You're shaking your head very knowingly. Do you have those days? Do you have those days?
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think the future of design looks like? A little bit of
Lots
a pivot there.
lots of OOUX. No pivot, just OOUX, more OOUX. I feel like that is what I truly do see our slow growth, the OOUX community, and I will even say the movement of integrating object-oriented UX. And I like to say, I'm not telling people they need to throw everything else out. This is not like, oh, you're doing everything wrong and do this instead. Like, no, 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 no. Like, add this to your process and it will make everything else easier. So I think this mindset of problem solving and bringing this process in and bringing aspects of this process in and going, deeper into the structure so we can create more intuitive and connected systems. I see it growing. I People tell me it's growing. Other people are like, I keep hearing about it. People keep talking about it. So I think that it will just continue to grow. And so I think, thank you for having me on here so I can say that and I can talk about it. And maybe some listeners will get curious and check it out. Because it really is transformational. And it's just such a one of the main words that I see in my testimonials. Like if you did a word cloud of my testimonials, it's game changer.
No, just I hope people are listening and I hope they're paying attention and they do check it out.
Yeah. So I think that is one thing of like, I see OOUX getting bigger and stronger and helping our industry and helping us create more intuitive, just elegantly intuitive systems that really mimic mental models and the way that our brains evolved to just perceive reality, right? We didn't evolve to perceive, a bunch of data on screens. We evolved to perceive objects and their relationships and what we can do with those objects and the different attributes of those objects. That's how our brain works. So let's work with it instead of against it. And then, of course, I see AI. AI is it's gonna be another game changer. It's massive, and it's exciting and scary. And I'll give a shout out to Patricia Reiners. I took her course earlier this year, and that was very, very eye opening. Her podcast is great as well. Future UX, UX of the future UX. Look at Patricia Reiner. Yeah, so I think we could probably have a whole other episode on AI, but it is, I think that there has been a little bit of a lull now. Like there was like, oh my gosh, AI. And now people are like, okay, ChatGPT is cool. But if you really start like, yes, we're kind of maybe at a plateau, but there's going to be another exponential rise of it. And it's going to really change, especially in the near future, how we do UI. Maybe not. UX has got a little bit more time, but UI is really going to change.
I agree with you on that piece for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. A few closing questions for you. What is your favorite quote?
The quote that has been rattling around in my head for a while, and you mentioned the shadow of confidence and productivity. So you might know this quote too. This is a Carl Jung quote. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule you and you will call it fate. And that has been a big freaking deal for me, of making the unconscious conscious and recognizing what my beliefs are about my work, my productivity, my creativity. That has been a game changer. And then the other one is an Oliver Burkeman one. And I'm going to kind of, actually, I do have it somewhere, the actual quote. Where is it? I don't find it. He says something like, I don't know where I put it. He says it much more poetically, but basically he says, when people are successful, they get busier, and it shouldn't be that way. Like, that was not that way, actually, historically. When people got more successful, they got less busy. They actually got more leisure time. And I am trying to kind of reverse that sort of message that is in our culture of like, the more successful you are, it's like this badge of honor, like, oh my gosh, I'm so busy, basically means I'm so successful. And if you're like bored and you're not doing it, or like, which bored would be like amazing, but like if you're not, maybe bored isn't the right word, but if you have a lot of free time and you have time to volunteer and spend a lot of time with your family, people kind of like look at that weirdly, like, oh, like maybe they just don't have much going on, or that's like a sign that you're not successful. So I am trying to make successful mean that I do have more space. I can take an entire winter. I can give myself more space to, forage for mushrooms and spend time in nature.
It's so important. I love that you said that. Any content recommendations?
Oliver Burkeman. Yes. If this conversation resonates and some of the things that I said, and you're like, yeah, Sophia, I am the type of person who ends the day feeling like they didn't get enough done. His most recent book, Meditations for Mortals, is awesome. And then that book will actually help you have less anxiety about all the content there is out there because there's so much content out there. We are constantly in the stream of content. But then I have to recommend my own content, of course. The OOUX podcast is a really great place to start if you are interested in OOUX. And then if you sign up with my newsletter, which is really not obnoxious. It's like every Monday, if that. Very unobnoxious, very unobtrusive newsletter at OOUX.com/newsletter. I've got a free OOUX launch guide that I'll send you. So it is, it's about a 55-page ebook that'll kind of like get you started and get you on the path and sort of help you navigate all the OOUX content that is out there because there's a lot now. So yeah, definitely check that out. Yeah, those would be my recommendations.
Where can people find you?
I would say LinkedIn is the best place. Sophia Prater. I think I'm the only Sophia Prater. Sophia V. Prater. If you can't find me, easy to find there. I'm not on any other socials, kind of on Instagram, but don't even bother. So LinkedIn and OOUX.com. Also forum.OOUX.com is our community. So it's free to join that community as well. So you can talk to other OOUXers. You could talk to me. I'm in there. So those would be the best places to go.
This was awesome. There was so many things that you said here that I want to listen again. It was just incredibly good and a lot of great nuggets of information there. Thank you so much for taking time today to do this.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for all your wonderful questions. I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed it, and hopefully it'll help some people out.
That's it for today's episode. Let's keep the conversation going. Drop a comment with your thoughts, like this episode if it resonated with you, and share it with someone who might benefit. And don't forget to follow so you never miss an episode. Thanks for being part of this journey with us. Until next time.